Hello, good day. This is Bogdan and Manfred from HYCU and Nutanix. Today we want to talk about ransomware data protection in a box. Manfred, do you want to say hello to the attendees?
Hello, everybody. Good morning, Bogdan. I know it's even short before lunch, but I still say good morning. So thank you for having me here. Looking forward to the webinar.
Wonderful. Thank you, Manfred. So today, obviously, we want to talk about ransomware data protection, and everything begins with ransomware, right? And what is it and how you should be protecting against it. And then we are going to be introducing, as part of the agenda, two technologies that work very nicely and tightly together to deliver this ransomware protection, which first is going to be Nutanix Objects. This is going to be covered by Manfred in depth, and then I'm going to switch into the topic of HYCU backup and recovery that provides this second component, and both these together will give you, as we will show then, ransomware data protection in a box. We are, of course, going to provide a demo as well as end with a summary. And with that, let's begin. So, protecting from ransomware. So we have all heard about ransomware, and it's nothing new, so I don't want to over-educate you here, but it's really, ransomware is a type of malware that encrypts your files, obviously, and then if you want those files back, you have to pay a ransom, right, to get those back. Obviously, these ransoms have kind of increased in cost, and they can really, go even up to millions of dollars. Who can be the targets? Universities, government agencies, medical facilities, basically anyone that has critical data. And how can you decrypt the files that you depend on, your business depends on? Well, it's very, very difficult if you don't have the correct decryption keys, and that's exactly what attackers are after, right? Your inability to decrypt the files so they can ask you for money. So how can you combat ransomware? Obviously, prior to the infection, there are two things you absolutely must be doing. First one is prevention, right? Any kind of antivirus software, anti-malware, any tools basically that will protect your environment, your network, as well as protect users from themselves sometimes, to not click on certain unsecure links and downloading the ransomware that will then in silence begin its encryption efforts. But we always know that whatever prevention you put in place, it's never going to be 100%. So you absolutely need to have a second strategy there if you get hit. Some people even say when you get hit, but it's just a matter of time. So obviously the solution to that is regularly do your backups of your valuable data. And then if you get hit by ransomware, obviously the data that you have backed up is going to help you recover and restore your business operations in probably a very, very short time frame without needing to pay any money to ransomers.
Maybe two comments from my side, Bogdan, if you're okay. So speaking to a lot of prospects, a lot of customers, nobody likes to talk about ransomware. So it's this thing everybody in the industry talks about, but if you got hit, not many tell you that you got hit. And talking to a number of people who got hit, customers who got hit, prospects, what I learned is these days the modern ransomware is targeted. So they know exactly who to attack. It's not anymore the broad attacks. It's they know this company I want to attack. They know the doors. They even go after the backup software in the first step, what I learned, to switch off the backup software and then start 6 months, 8 months, 9 months earlier, encrypting the data. And at some point, do the click and say, hey guys, you want to get your data back? Please pay the ransom. So what I learned, please expect that if you are a target, or everybody is a target, that the software is designed to attack you these days.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Thank you, Manfred. Obviously, having a backup software in place is not going to completely solve your ransomware potential issues. Obviously, it is great to protect your data, but as Manfred explained, ransomware can also encrypt your backups or delete them, right? Because ransomwares are lately also targeting specific backup products and, of course, disabling them to protect your data. So obviously, you need a bit more, not just a good backup product that does this effectively and efficiently, but also immutable storage, or storage that prevents data to be modified once data has been written to it. In other words, that's called a warm storage, which is write once and then read many times but never change. Of course, the innovation that we wanted to present to you is also, can we deliver this with our joint technologies with Nutanix and HYCU in a box, so that customers can simply take this solution and get ransomware and data protection in a single box. And of course, the solution to that is called Nutanix Objects and HYCU. So these are the two technologies, two solutions. You merge them together. They collaborate nicely to deliver exactly that: ransomware as well as data protection in a single box. So Manfred will now tell you about the Nutanix Objects, which is an essential part in delivering this data immutability. So Manfred, please take it away.
Okay, thank you. So before I start and jump into objects, I think what we heard about ransomware is really targeted to attack you. And while it's all about the safety of the data and the safety and the security of your backup solution, at the same time, it's also about the simplicity of the backup solution and the backup together integrated with the storage. And that's really where Nutanix Objects comes into the place on the back end. But when we talk about storage, in the traditional world, we start off with block storage where you have reserved, we all know, iSCSI LANs, fiber channel LANs. And then over time, we moved into the file storage. And if we compare the storage type to parking, block storage is like you have reserved parking, everything is set up, where you park it in, but not a lot of spaces, everything is totally controlled. While file storage is more like, the file systems, and you have to search where's the place, and it's in a structure. And now object comes into the game. Object is the valid parking, and the valid parking really for petabytes, exabytes. While we had block storage, let me say, in the terms of gigabytes LANs, but you don't see exabyte LANs basically. You don't see exabyte files, but Objects is designed for trillions of data of objects. It's designed for exabyte scale, but in a model where you do valid parking. You give the keys to somebody and he takes care where the data is, that it's in the right place, that it's, for example, locked like a warm device. So it's all about valid parking, what we do. And that's the perfect model to go into the backup arena. And so why object storage? So in object storage, instead of a directory, you just have a bucket. You access it to an HTTP address. You just say, HTTP bucket, give me my data, or HTTP bucket, send my data in. And you have one global namespace across different locations, across geos. So it's one namespace. You don't care about the management of the data. The object store does it for you, like a valid parking. And the objects are immutable. You cannot change them while they are in. You just put in a new object, and then you can put warm on top of it. So make sure it's write once and not changeable. So think about the backup. You take the backup data, you put it in there, and now you say it's locked. And what we use here is we use the warm feature, which comes more or less from a compliance arena, where you have to lock the data for 10 years, 5 years. So we use it now for the backup to lock the data. The next time the backup comes, new data has to be written. So you cannot delete it for this certain amount of time. So perfect for backup. And that's what we bring into the space from an object store. But at the same time, when you look into object stores over time, we saw the different storages. We saw the block storage, which is always seen as super fast, high performance. I have my Ferrari, it's super fast. And then you have the file system somewhere in the medium. And the object store is more seen like, oh, this is this large scale truck who can basically carry many objects, many things, basically at a large scale. And what we see now over the time in the development, and that's really what things are changing. Initially, objects has only been for archive, where we use the warm features for compliance. And these days, we see change in the development that object stores also getting high performance. So we see on object stores and Nutanix objects in the meantime, block-based performance, gigabyte per second performance, which enables us to go into the backup arena and into the analytics arena. So large change on objects going forward, and there's even the industries changing on this one. From an architecture perspective, I mentioned it. An object store is a single namespace across different data centers, across different server nodes, across different clusters, whatever. It's one single namespace. You just say HTTP, object store, bucket Manfred, and you put the data in. Whatever it is underneath, it doesn't really matter. The object store takes care about it, where you put the data. Internally in an object store, for sure, you have all the capabilities. You have snapshot capabilities, the versioning, deduplication, data security like erasure coding to always assure the data itself is consistent, it's safe. All these things are built in, or tiering, or locality information, compression for the efficiency, deduplication for the efficiency, all built in under the covers. You don't have to take care. It looks basically for the best cost performance, but at the same time also gives you the warm capability. And it's like a valet parking, also simple to operate. And that's just a UI of the Nutanix objects. You look on it, you do an object store, you even see how many requests did I get per second? What's the throughput in megabytes per second? What's the time to get an object until it's fetched the first time to get an object? So with Nutanix objects, you just say, set up the bucket, it scales out whatever amount of clusters, you get the performance insights, you set up the buckets, and here you are done. You see all the alerts. Machine learning gives you some recommendations how to leverage capacity better or to add nodes into it as you need more capacity. But coming back to the screenshot in here, you have all the information to manage your object in a super easy way. Just one click and all the information is there. One click to extend it, one click to remove things out there. Super easy to operate and give you the wallet parking for your data, scaling from megabytes, gigabytes, petabytes, up to the exabyte scale. That's what we bring in to this one. And all at super high performance. And bringing all this together, it's a high performance object store for different applications. We see what you see here on this slide from some partners. High performance objects. Let's start off. Industry is changing in here. Trends like analytics software is going and tell you, please use object stores. Splunk, for example, push out their warm data, their cold data into an object store. So it's not anymore the cold data, it's also the warm data which they access. So high performance objects for analytics, high performance for backup. And then here comes into the place warm capabilities. I lock my backup data. Now we talked about ransomware. What's the first thing a ransomware try to do? Figure out what is the backup software used. Can I switch off the backup software? Can I encrypt the backup data? If the data is on a warm device, there's no way to encrypt it. So bringing in this capability changed the game on backup software, bring it in, and especially the integration with HYCU. Bogdan said, hey, we bring in two tools together. I have to say it a bit different. We integrated the software of both ones into a single UI. The software looks really like one. You have seen the screenshot for my performance monitoring, but HYCU and the Nutanix Objects is basically just It looks like one console. That's really what I would like to say on this one. And in terms of looking specific into the backup solution, there's two possibilities. Use object in a more traditional way, like an archive. We have seen it in the past, where you say, I archive data, I keep it away. That's on the left side. Here we have an hyperconverged backup appliance with HYCU. It all is integrated. It's one software console, and we do the backup into the backup appliance. And from the backup appliance, we archive the data into objects. Or we go into the right side, where we just say, objects is the primary store. It delivers the high performance. It delivers the native warm for the backup. And we use this one as one appliance. And with HYCU, it's integrated like one solution. And when I say integrated, this means joint software development. A single console to look into it, and all out of one UI to see what's going on. And this simplifies the management. I always call it, that's the appliance for the cloud age to manage your backups. Really summarize it again. The architecture we put in place for object, it's not only simple to the outside, like valet parking for data, it's also simple under the covers, simple, easy to operate. It is secure. We have all the safety features from a Nutanix platform built in, but on top, the warm capabilities. But never forget, we deliver high performance objects. We can put it on all flash, and you get similar performance like on block devices these days with the objects, and the warm capability to secure your data that no ransomware or whatever attack you have can delete the data anymore until the period you have set it. And still looking into the efficiency, have the space efficiency in there, self-healing, machine learning information behind it. So the operation is really simplified for the Nutanix object. Ending with the great slide, if you're already a Nutanix customer or you are about to get Nutanix into your data center, the Nutanix software stack, there's 2 terabytes of objects free on your clusters. You can leverage it. If you run a totally object cluster from a licensing, you can run 1 VM per node. And here comes the HYCU appliance, the ransomware appliance in place. So we leverage this one, put HYCU, the backup software into the object store, integrated from a software, and have this one ransomware appliance ready to ship for you, ready to operate, valid parking for your data. And let me say, valid parking to restore from a ransomware attack. Bogdan, I hand over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Manfred. I think that's a great cue line to jump into the topic of HYCU. So obviously you've seen Nutanix Objects and the great capabilities it delivers, high performance, ability to lock down the data once it's written, all key qualities that a backup software can then integrate with and deliver the ransomware and data protection as designed. So just first to spend a few minutes on what HYCU is. Right? Obviously, HYCU is a backup solution that has some key differentiators compared to other backup solutions on the market, which there are, of course, many. So first and foremost, the key capability of quality of HYCU is simplicity. We wanted the product to be simple to use, yet powerful. This is very much aligned also with the philosophy of Nutanix. And that's why these two technologies go so nicely together. The second thing is also, it has a great total cost of ownership because of simplicity and this tight integration and ability to configure very complex concepts in a couple of clicks. The third quality, and it's really this quality is very important to Nutanix customers specifically, is best alignment with Nutanix technology. HYCU has been the first and the only in many areas of Nutanix where we deliver data protection either extremely efficiently or we protect data that nobody else is protecting at this point in time. Examples of this are Nutanix volumes, right? We can do volume snapshots. We can also protect Nutanix files, and as we will see as we go through. And HYCU is also multi-cloud enabled, so you can definitely back up to any of the public clouds, the big three that we know, and use those as well for your storage. In these days, everybody is more or less, at least looking at multi-clouds and how they can make them part of their IT strategy. And this is also where we support the customers. All right, simple yet powerful. Let's first begin with the deployment, because this is the very first thing end customers kind of experience the product with. With HYCU, we like to say you will deploy it in 3 minutes. Why is that so? Because HYCU comes as a prepackaged virtual appliance based on Linux, and pre-built, pre-packaged, you just take it and deploy it onto your virtualization environment, either be this Nutanix, either be this VMware. So you simply deploy there, spin it up, and your backup product is actually up and running. So this is a far cry from other, more traditional backup products where you have to install and configure a lot of moving parts and databases so that things start to work, and you probably spend days before you can get going. With HYCU, it's 3 minutes. But then the next thing you start consuming is the user interface. And this is where this iPhone application analogy comes in. It's a sleek, modern HTML5 web-based user interface that, it's just a joy to use and very easy to learn. After that is, of course, you need to start configuring your backups. And some of the unique qualities of HYCU are it has really this modern concept of backup policies, where you basically, instead of fine-tuning every single parameter of a backup process, you simply state your business needs, how you need backup to happen through the policies, and policies will simply take care of everything else for the scheduling, for any other parameters of the backup process, whether you're backing up application or simply a virtual machine. All these are going to be automatically taken into account. Okay, so what about recovering your data? That also, of course, has to be a quick and effective process, because when you need to recover the data, typically it's a very hectic situation, and everybody's nervous and everybody wants data back as soon as possible. HYCU uses some very unique optimizations to be able to recover the data quickly, sometimes even from snapshots, which, of course, are the fastest way you can recover data anyway. So there are some smart ways how HYCU can use those to recover your data if they still exist. Granular recovery of data, absolutely. Files and folders can be recovered if you need. We talk about granular recovery of virtual machine elements, or granular recovery of application data such as mailboxes or similar SQL Server databases. All of that is nicely covered. But where really the simplicity comes from, and simplicity is kind of overarching theme of the backup product, is because of the built-in intelligence and full application focus. So a lot of capabilities that you as an end user will experience and say, oh, that's very easy to use, actually comes on top of the some smart code that has been developed that is able to figure out most of the things automatically for you. So we can auto-tune to the environments, to kind of understand the changes of the environment. HYCU is also using the most efficient APIs to be able to perform certain backup operations. It is able to automatically discover applications hosted inside of the virtual machines, and then adapt the backup process according to those apps. So there is simply a lot of this intelligence built into the product, and auto detection capabilities, so that you as an end user, you don't have to worry about these things. So when you tell us go back up this virtual machine or this application, most of the things are figured out automatically, and you just say how often you want backups to happen, and then how long you want to keep them, and then we do the rest. So that's the simple yet powerful part. So what about the best Nutanix alignment part? So this is something that, of course, will be very well accepted by Nutanix customers that have decided to onboard and go with Nutanix technology because it's simply the best hyperconverged technology in the market. So as you know, Nutanix comes with a lot of additional technology built into the platform that you can utilize. For example, Nutanix files for file shares, volumes for, like Manfred so nicely mentioned this analogy to parking slots, right? So to parking. So all these storage technologies, HYCU can fully support out of the box in the most optimal way. Then, of course, there is this HV hypervisor that Nutanix delivers. Nutanix is, of course, hypervisor agnostic. It also works with ESX. So we are able to cover all of these hypervisors as well from the backup perspective. HYCU is agentless, so completely agentless. So there's nothing you will have to ever install in any of the virtual machines that run in your Nutanix clusters. So simply HYCU is able to carry out all the backup procedures in an agentless fashion. If you're into automation through Nutanix Calm, REST API scripting, so all of these are fully supported by HYCU as well. You can automate HYCU same way as you can automate the Nutanix platform. Nutanix Mine is a kind of integrated backup appliance solution. And of course, as such, as Manfred has shown on his slide, we do integrate with that as well as with the Prism user interface hosted on the Mine appliance. We can also back up Nutanix clusters. HYCU can do physical machine backup. It's also fully multi-tenant enabled. So this is very useful capability, for example, for service providers who want to maybe share the single large environment across multiple tenants. HYCU will make sure that also backups for these tenants are completely separated. And not only that, they will also have the self-service capability. So tenants will be able to log into HYCU using their credentials and only get access to their data and be able to, if you want, just recover data, but do not change any configuration. Configuration is your responsibility. A service provider tenant can only recover data if they want to. Another use case for multi-tenancy could be a large organization that has departmental use, and each department is maybe responsible for their sets of resources, virtual machines, applications. Again, you can treat those departments as tenants within a bigger organization. Or if you're a large organization that has first, second, third tier support, you can also give your first or second level support people access to HYCU through this multi-tenancy capability. And they are then able to get, for example, just recover permissions for end users. And when the users call in and they want these files or databases to be restored for them, a first, second level support can go in and simply resolve the situation without giving them full admin permissions, right? Just to restore capabilities. Application aware, so fully able to detect applications that are installed. It can back up Nutanix remote office, branch office type of setup. So it's highly optimized and also is able to do near sync replications, which is a technology inside of Nutanix. SAP HANA is fully supported by Nutanix as well as HYCU as well. So a lot of alignment. And today, but also going into the future, we are very closely working with Nutanix product teams to deliver these capabilities. What about compatibility, right? You may ask yourself, okay, so how can I deploy HYCU then? Very simple, straightforward. It's a virtual machine, right? As a virtual machine, it can basically run anywhere. So officially, we support these combinations, right? Nutanix. So HYCU running on Nutanix with HV hypervisor or with ESX, but also, HYCU can run on a vSphere environment as well. But really, we've seen HYCU run also in some other hypervisors. So, it's many things are possible. Officially supported are, of course, only these. What about the sources? What can HYCU back up as a source? same 3 hypervisors and Nutanix combinations. And then, of course, HYCU can also back up physical machines. So what about the targets, right? What can we use as storage to store backup data? Of course, today we are going to talk about Nutanix Objects first and foremost, but there are other options as well from Nutanix portfolio, as well as simply generic storage is supported as well through NFS, SMB, SCSI protocols, as well as public clouds, right? The big 3 fully supported and can be used for your storage needs. So this is just a little bit of something if you want to learn more about HYCU or give it a try. It's very simple, straightforward. Try HYCU.com and fill out the form, and you will be downloading HYCU in a minute and then installing it in another 3 minutes, and probably in half an hour you'll be up and running, and you'll be able to create your first backups. We also like to give away stuff for free. So 1 terabyte of backup for Nutanix customers, for Nutanix files. If you want to test this out, absolutely it's available. Just reach out to us on this promotion below. As well as something very unique. So Nutanix and HYCU are working very closely together around Nutanix Mine and HYCU, and you can now test drive it on Nutanix Test Drive platform. So it's a very unique thing. You can simply go in and play with Mine and HYCU for a couple of hours on your own time, and completely free of charge. Just register and give it a go. So very nice, very easy, and again shows close collaboration of our 2 companies. So let's now jump into the topic of ransomware data protection in a box. Now we have learned about the 2 key components of this solution, right? Nutanix Objects and HYCU working together and delivering this capability. So how do you go about protecting your data in this fashion now? And of course, get the solution for that in a box, as we call it. Okay, so let's take a look at the first option, right? First option kind of includes 2 components, 2 solutions from Nutanix: Nutanix Mine and Nutanix Objects, right? As they have been designed in such a way to protect and use objects in a more classical way of just for your archives, as Manfred has mentioned. So you have your production environment. So the very first thing you would do to set up is to set up your backup tier. So you would use Nutanix Mine cluster as a backup tier. You would, of course, put a HYCU virtual machine, so HYCU software, which is a lockdown Linux appliance in place, running on top of Mine. And then for archiving purposes, so to have your second or archival copy of your data, you would set up Nutanix Objects cluster. And then obviously, we also need ransomware, right? And that's where this S3 object lock comes into play, where you are going to be protecting the buckets on the objects with this warm policy. So the data, once it's written, can not be modified. So this is how you get ransomware data protection. So this kind of type of a solution can then further be extended. If you need another copy of your data somewhere in the public cloud just to be extra safe, again, it can be done that way. So that's in a way, a very full and complete, and we could also call it traditional way to set up your backups with backup tier, archival tier, and maybe a more traditional role for objects. But as Manfred has mentioned, objects has really dramatically improved, and it is today and these days extremely high performance storage as well. So there is an alternative way to look at this solution, which is the second use case we are presenting here, where you are designing your backup solution and ransomware data protection solution just around HYCU and Nutanix Objects only. So let's look at that option. So first you have a production environment, same as before, but now instead of setting up Mine, you would opt just going with Objects. If this is the way you want to set this up, and of course you call this a backup tier because of the great performance. And Manfred has just mentioned that objects can also host a virtual machine, and well, HYCU is a virtual machine, right? So you can actually put HYCU, the lockdown Linux appliance, running on top of Objects cluster to deliver the backup functionality. And again, of course, you want ransomware data protection. So you put S3 object locked in place onto your buckets that you want to use for this purpose. And HYCU will automatically detect this lock is in place, and it will correctly work with such buckets so that it will observe the rules that need to be observed for buckets that are worm protected. So again, this can be your kind of alternative way how you protect the data, simply because the performance that Objects delivers is there, that it can also serve as a backup tier. And now, of course, you can also use potentially a cloud for your archival needs or whatever else to have remote copy of your data, for example.
May I jump in here, Bogdan? Also adding, now you have this single appliance, all runs in the same operating system, all tightly software integrated, which simplifies your backup management. There is, let me say, less risk of failures. So we remove basically the failure capabilities. And last but not least, in terms of security, with worm capabilities and HYCU's way to check that worm is always also set up, because admins can make failures happen. You are absolutely secure and at the same time tightly integrated, easy to manage, but also leveraging the best of your hardware infrastructure, capacity and CPU out of the same infrastructure for backup and secure storage.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. A nice summary. So now this combination is, of course, fully supported, and allows you to be really effective and have a tight kind of ransomware data protection in place for your business needs. Right, so you may ask yourself, but how do I enable this worm capability on my objects cluster? And you will be surprised, but not really, right? Nutanix is known for its simplicity. It's a simple setting. When you create a bucket, you would simply go under the lifecycle prop policies, and there you can set up a policy that will lock the objects that get created and written and finalized for any number, any time frame that you want, for example 5, 7 years, whatever you need. So that will ensure that after this capability is enabled, that nobody can modify your data, your objects, once they're written to this bucket. So
we secure them, but also make sure if you set up the 10 years, you keep your backups for 10 years. There's no way to delete it, just
Indeed.
to make sure.
Indeed, yeah. So that probably will result in you needing more capacity, which is always a good thing, right? Wonderful. So with that, I think we are ready for a demo now. So, the starting point of this demo is, of course, going to be HYCU now. So we have seen, right? We have seen that. Our underlying platform is now Nutanix Objects, and HYCU is a virtual machine running on top of this objects cluster. So one of the things you notice is that HYCU has this modern HTML5 user interface. So when I log into HYCU, this is what I'm presented with, right? Imagine this running on your objects cluster and ready to go, so that you start backing up your data and protecting it onto the objects cluster itself, onto the worm-enabled and protected bucket. Right? Okay, so this is how you begin. So first, initially, your screen is going to be empty, and you need to configure a couple of things first, right? One of the things that you need to configure initially is sources. Sources are basically the data you will be protecting. Remember, we were on one of the slides, we had this production environment with lots of clusters, tons of virtual machines. This is exactly what you configure under the hypervisor section. You enter the name of the clusters, the URL of the cluster, username and password, and you simply connect to that cluster, and HYCU will be able to automatically discover all the virtual machines inside of that cluster. So this is fully supported for Nutanix AHV, Nutanix ESX, but also if you need to vCenter, we can back up all of these and configure them under the hypervisor section. HYCU can also back up Nutanix files extremely effectively. It's one of the few products on the market that does that, uses special technology called change file tracking. which allows you to do incremental backups extremely fast. Even if you have millions and millions of files, you will be able to back up those 10 files that have been modified since the last backup within a minute, right? It's that fast and simple. And this is how you configure Nutanix files capability so that HYCU can access it and back it up. And
Maybe
then
a comment on this one, just one comment. We will do an extra session on files. Files has an analytics capability to trigger attack patterns or attack anomalies. So Nutanix NAS file services have a capability to trigger user anomalies, which can be a ransomware. And we will do a separate session to show you how we can leverage the user events and the ransomware protection in once. So that you may look up for this one in the future.
Yeah, I'd love to see this demo. That would be wonderful. All right, Nutanix files. Then we can also back up physical machines, right? So if you still have some of those left somewhere, and typically you always find at least a few, those can be configured here. HYCU will make sure they are backed up. So you have configured your sources, and immediately after you configure sources, if you go on the virtual machines, you will find all those virtual machines listed that we have discovered or manually that you have configured the physical ones, right? So these are the VMs. The second step is you have to tell us about your storage, right? Where do you want to put your data to? And obviously, because we are talking about Nutanix objects here, we run on an objects cluster. Here is already one that is pre-configured, but simply the way to configure access to this bucket that you have configured in Nutanix Prism is you add this target. You give it a name, right? You would call it probably objects in your case, give it the description, any sizing limitations. As far as the access goes, you have to select S3 compatible, which is what object is, right? And then specify URL, the name of the bucket, other access credentials, and then this will allow HYCU to simply connect to this bucket. Now, HYCU will automatically detect if the bucket that you have connected to is also warm protected, because in that case, HYCU needs to treat such bucket differently in correct way, because once you are done writing, you cannot modify data anymore. So we observe all these rules that need to be applied, and we correctly, of course, handle warm protected buckets. That's one of the main reasons why we have that. Okay, so you can also configure some alternative clouds. For example, if you want to also send a copy of your data to Azure or to Google, you simply go and configure those as well. So let's take a look at the Google example. So here we have a Google Cloud target configured, and simply, with additional credentials and all that, you are able to access Google Cloud as well. All right, our storage is in place. So what do we do next? Quite simply, the concept that drives backups in HYCU are called policies, right? Policy actually is a specification where you declare how you want backups to happen. It's really straightforward. And again, HYCU comes pre-configured with gold, silver, bronze, but you can create any number of those you like. For example, my favorite one is, as you can say from my history, once a day, right? Once a day policy simply does backups once a day, and that's what it is. So then you specify, so some of the key capabilities, properties of backup policy are how often you want to backup, right? And this in backup speak, this is called RPO, right? So well, obviously, if I want to backup once a day, I will state that. Then you have to tell us, and this is a very unique capability of HYCU, do you have any business requirements in terms of recovery? Do you need to recover your data within certain time frame? And very often you may find that certain critical databases or virtual machines have very tight recovery times, or RTOs defined. And let's say this is two hours, right? You just specify that. Now, what this will tell to HYCU is to observe if you are going to be able to meet those limitations, because HYCU will constantly measure the speed of your network, the speed of your storage obviously it knows the size of your virtual machine that you're protecting, and it will calculate whether you are able to meet these aggressive RTOs. And if you are, it will say, boom, you are compliant. But if not, it will tell you that, so you will have the ability to react and obviously see if the storage is too slow. Of course, with objects, this will never happen. Maybe it's the network is too slow, whatever else could be a factor, you can work on it and then improve to meet the business requirements. Retention, 4 weeks, 4 months, 4 years, really don't mind whatever is the business requirement on your end. And then, of course, you need to specify a target. And of course, we are going to go after Nutanix objects in our case, right? So let's say we want first copy of our data to go to Nutanix objects, warm protected Nutanix objects. That's all well and fine. So what about the, I want a second copy, right, of my data. Having one copy of backups is never really good policy. You should have at least 3 copies, as we know, and on 2 different media and so on. So let's see how the second copy can be defined. Quite simply, you indicate you want a second copy. You can also define retention for the second copy. And then, as we've said, we maybe want this copy to go to Google Cloud, right? Why not? And that's how you can configure that, one of your copies is going to be remote in the public cloud, and, you are happy with these settings now. Now, if you wanted to have a further copy or archival copy, you simply enable this third option, and then you can say, okay, create a third copy for me, please, weekly, monthly, yearly, somewhere completely different. Could be another archival objects cluster altogether, and completely separate, so that your archives are somewhere else. So again, lots of abilities there. There are some other optimizations that HYCU also delivers. For example, a backup from replica. This is a great capability specifically designed for Nutanix. If you want to back up remote office, branch office setups, you will configure that. Fast restore will allow you to keep multiple snapshots on the source cluster so that you can quickly recover for them. We also sometimes call this instant recovery, right? If you need to recover a virtual machine from 2 days ago, and we still have the snapshot, we will simply recover it from snapshot. It's way faster than any storage can deliver, right? Because you just work on the hypervisor. And there's also auto assignment capability that is great if you're using, for example, Nutanix categories, right? Now we can also use those categories to completely automate the backup process. And you can say, well, if a virtual machine has this specific category, then please back it up using this policy. Again, more automation, less work for you, less things to forget that you are, that you need to protect certain resources the way they were intended to. So very extremely flexible mechanism. All right, once you configure your backup policies, what do you do with them? Obviously, you start assigning them to virtual machines, and you would, with HYCU, you simply select individual virtual machine, let's say this one, and you would say, well, I want to assign a policy to this VM. You click on the policies, you say, I want this to be backed up using a bronze, click assign, and you're done. From that point on, HYCU will simply take care of your virtual machine and protect it. Now, if you need to restore the data, right, and of course, that's why you do backups. If you need to restore the data, you would simply go to this restore point section for the virtual machine and select the backup that you want to recover, let's say this one, and then you have the options to restore individual files or the complete VM. Right? So if you want to restore the complete virtual machine, you can restore it in place, or you can clone it. So there are many, many options. You can just restore individual vDisks if you wanted to, and get this.
So I can restore single files from a VM?
Absolutely. And that's the second option that also is available with HYCU, because HYCU can simply open up the backup and then, parse the file system and show you the files that are inside of the file system for that virtual machine. And you simply navigate the folder structure, say, I want to recover this folder or this specific file, and this is exactly what HYCU will do. right? So do something like that, go next, and then you can simply recover back to the VM onto some file share, or you can download even to your laptop potentially if you're the user, right? That's a great self-service capability, for example, in this case. You want file to be downloaded to you personally, and then you work with it.
So it's really about the restore. Because many guys say it's all about the backup. You never restore, but it's really about the restore.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, they're right, yeah. Okay, HYCU also has great built-in application backup capabilities, right? And applications are all automatically discovered, right? The thing that you need to configure for each virtual machine is the admin account, right? So HYCU obviously has to have some access permissions to the VM to be able to do this, what we call application discovery. And if you give us those credentials, like in this case, credentials have been assigned to the VM. We use those credentials and go and look inside of that virtual machine and figure out what applications does it have installed that we need to, potentially allow you to protect. And then again, we have obviously discovered in our test environment a number of applications: a SQL Server, Oracle database, SAP HANA, Active Directory, Exchange Server. And if those applications are discovered, and when they are discovered, it's extremely simple from that point on to back them up, right? And the principle of backing up applications is exactly the same as virtual machines. You simply assign a backup policy to them, right? Because remember, backup policy defines how often you want to back up, how long you want to keep the data. Should you create 2 copies of your backup data? So in a very declarative way, you are simply stating your backup needs. Everything else, HYCU will figure out automatically for you, right? You don't have to specify that. You don't have to tell us this is Exchange Server and that mailboxes are in this folder or that folder, because we figure out everything on our own, right? So you simply say which policy you want to use, click assign, and then we will back this up. When it's time to restore, then you have the option to restore the whole server, just individual databases, or also individual mailboxes or public folders. And again, then you go next, select the mailbox, and you're done. So, applications are really first-class citizens within HYCU. So we allow you to back up applications exactly the same way as you can back up virtual machines.
So no reason to pay a ransom. We get the data back.
Absolutely not, especially with objects and S3 object locks completely, yeah. All right, so this is in essence the bulk of the product. Of course, as you would expect, there's a lot of reporting built into the product as well. So this is hidden under the reports. You can also create PDFs of reports. You can send those reports to you over the email on a regular every morning, for example, and you can review the status of backups. So most of the time, our customers don't even come to this console anymore. They just get this PDF every morning. They check if all the backups were fine, and then just go with their work. So it's a 1-minute process instead of logging in, checking, and things like that. So very, very big time saver on that front as well. Maybe self-service deserves a slightly bit more overview. Self-service allows you, as we've said, to set up multiple tenants, or in a big organization, departmental use, or first, second level support people can log into HYCU and just have restore permissions available to them, so that they can handle support calls of end users around recovery very effectively. And this is where you define these different user groups. And when you add users to the group, you simply say which user you want to add, for example, to administrator group. And then this is where you select a role of this user, right? And this is how you can say one user has full admin permissions, the other user can just do a recovery, right? Like in this case, restore. Or maybe a user can just be a viewer, right? Can just look at reports, but cannot change anything. Can be a use for that as well. So that's, in short, I would say a quick overview of HYCU. And, as again, HYCU would be sitting on top of Nutanix Objects and delivering really this ransomware data protection in a box type of a solution that you can effectively use to get this additional protection. So to summarize, and I will go briefly through that. So obviously, we've presented two options to you, right? Ransomware data protection in a box, right? Left one is a kind of bit more traditional, where you have Nutanix Mine used as a primary backup cluster, and then objects in more traditional way as archival capability that also delivers warm and data lockdown. And on the right-hand side, there's an option where you just go with HYCU and Objects because the speed and the performance and capabilities simply allow you to also do it that way, right? So how do they compare, right? On the left-hand side, obviously, with Nutanix, HYCU, and Mine, there are certain integrations in place that kind of bring these platforms closer together, such as single pane of glass, right? Inside of Nutanix Prism, you will see HYCU dashboard, so for compliance, for kind of oversight. Then HYCU and Mine can also be purchased as a single SKU from Nutanix directly, right? So it's a kind of nice way, an easy way for customers to go out after acquiring a solution. Mine itself is really available in an easy to select predefined sizes, extra small, small, medium, and you can kind of expand them as you need. So it's very easy, again, to expand. Backup and archival appliances, both include storage, of course. That's the purpose here. And within Mine, what you will find is that HYCU can directly provision storage with Mine. In Objects, you just create those buckets and configure them inside of HYCU. So both very straightforward operations, I would say. And obviously, we've talked about Objects being extremely fast in terms of performance of backup and recovery. Mine is, of course, nothing different. So basically, left-hand side, a very more traditional way how you may want to approach setting up. And of course, also making sure that backup and archival is all done at the same time. On the right-hand side, I would say, Objects and HYCU are just purchased separately, right? So there's no single SKU, but again, it's not a big thing or a complex thing to achieve. Objects are also, available as custom fit size. So whatever you need, you can acquire. Of course, Objects would include storage. Archival, you have to, of course, decide how you want to implement archivals as well. It can be another Objects cluster. It can also be public cloud, or it can also be tape, right? HYCU also fully supports tape. So if you have that need still, yes, it's absolutely available. Storage is then provisioned to Prism for Objects. And again, performance is absolutely not a problem with this modern Objects implementation. So in a way, we could say that Nutanix Objects and HYCU deliver this secure, high performance lockdown backups in an easy to manage single box, right? And that's what we call ransomware data protection in a box. And that's kind of the theme of this webinar. Would you like to add something at the end, Manfred?
Yeah, I think, I see the right side. If you need something today to go after ransomware and have a safe block to be safe, just start with the right side, even if you have some other backup software already in place. But if you need, say, I need to secure something, start off with this one. If you need to have a full-powered backup platform in the traditional way to back up all your applications, I would say the left side is probably the right way to go. Both ones highly scalable, both ones simple. But if you need something for ransomware in a box safety for, let me say, your company leaders, shares, whatever, the special one, just start off with this one, ready out of the box, go today from the small scale up to the large scale, and you are safe from ransomware attacks and never pay the ransom again.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you. So we very much appreciate you taking the time to see this webinar. So obviously reach out to any of us with regards to testing this on test drive, wanting to use and try out HYCU, or enjoy 1 terabyte of free Nutanix files backup. And with that, we are concluding this presentation today. Thank you so much for watching, and bye-bye.
Thank you.